Welcome, everyone. We've got people from California to England to Canada, Chicago. So welcome all. I just have to preface this that this is limited to 1 hour. So the amount of time spent on explaining the images may be limited. What I've selected are historically important photographs, but they're also, hopefully, that you enjoy it, a nice blend of eye candy. Glenn Curtis himself, whose museum is a major institution in the United States, and he was one of the most important people in the development of the airplane in the world. He was born in 1878 and lived to 1930. There are about 80 images in the presentation, and that is really problematic because it's sort of like doing anything with probably a third of the tools that you would like to have. But I think we've done a good job and selected what we can, and I'll enjoy presenting these. These are all my original photographs from my collection. You'll see, I think, 3 images with modern cycles. Those have antiquarian photographs as well with them. The 3 photographs are the bicycles that are in the Curtis Museum at this time. It's part of their display. The development of the bicycle was also very important. One of the most important developments that came out of the development with the bicycle was the differential gear. And the differential gear, we would not have a functioning automobile without it. That was developed about 1880 by James Starley in England, and it's a critical thing in automotive and cycling history. If anybody has any questions, you can get my email. I'd be more than happy to help anybody. And the other things that are critical with the development of the bicycle was social history, clothing, the suffragette movement with women, mass transport, the development of roads between cities and towns would not have progressed at the rate and way they did without the work of the wheel of the American Automobile Association, Canadian Automobile Association, which really were developments from the League of American Wheelmen and the Canadian Wheelmen's Association and the Bicycle Touring Club in the United Kingdom, as well as others in France and throughout Europe and obviously the world. So I'm going to start to proceed with the photographs now. And well, I'd like to proceed with the photographs now, but it's so this is the first photograph. This is from 1850. This is called a daguerreotype. The tricycle was called a propeller, and with provenance, this is the earliest known cycle, and others from this collection are in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And while you're looking at these things, I hope you'll enjoy looking at the costume as well as the design settings and other aspects of the images themselves. So it's called a rantoon. This is very late 1850s, early 1860s. And it, you can see where it's lever driven, crank driven. And there's some the steering here and steering with the lever here. This is a velocipede at the Curtis Museum. And this is an American velocipede. This is one of the first one. It was called a Whitty, and they called this a snake pattern, snake backbone. And this open head, this is one of the earliest ones. So now you're starting to get into what's forming as what you can see as a bicycle. So that's the American velocipede. Here is a French velocipede. Actually, this photograph was taken in London, England, but it is a French velocipede by the people who are credited with the development of the bike. Family name was Michaud. There's more to that story, but these are referred to as Michaud pattern velocipedes. Again, about 1868, 69, 70. And this is an American velocipede. This photograph was taken by a gentleman by the name of Muybridge, and he was the person who is famous for taking the photographs of the runners with the feet up off the ground and the race horses who people always thought that the horses had their hoofs on the ground at some stage, and he was the one who in photography proved otherwise. This is at Mechanics Hall in San Francisco, California in 1869. And what's sort of nice is there's a picture up there that's no doubt a wooden signboard, but I think any collector would love to get that. And also, originally when I got the photo, I had thought that they were on a dirt, but if you take a look, you can see it's really on slats of wood. So that was a riding school where people learned to ride the bicycles, their velocipede bicycles. Now you get in, you go from the bicycle to the penny farthing. And I'd like to add, these photographs are in chunks of like, ilk, and or similar. If they were all done in supposed date order, you'd get whiplash looking at them. So I've done them in little groups to make it more comfortable viewing them and talking about them and learning about them. So now I often get asked why the big wheel and why the small wheel. Well, the bigger the wheel, it was pretty simple. A revolution covered pi times diameter. So if you had a 12-inch wheel and you revolved once, you went about 30 inches. If you have a 58-inch wheel or a 60-inch wheel, you went about 15 feet when it revolved once. So that was the reason for the wheel getting larger and larger. This is one of my favorite photos. It's got a whippet down here, and the man's got what they call a Hill and Tolman bell. It's quite a rare bell. And there's an English scene, and he's got also, this was an effect of Lord Stanley, who went after Livingston. they call these Stanley hats. It's just a charming. It's one of my 5 favorite photos. And the photographs with high wheel bikes that are coming up, I've sort of segregated them. So that other gentleman was just a gentleman in a non-club situation. This guy's also just wearing standard clothes. When you look at the bike, you would see this gentleman. What I look at is these pedals tell me that it's a Columbia bicycle from the pattern of the pedals. And then I look at this, and there's a book to hold maps or books or any kind of paper. And that's the thrill of collecting, is getting these things and putting them all together, identifying the vehicle and its age. And this is about 1885, 1886, in that range. So this is May the 30th, 1880. And that's the first meet of the League of American Wheelmen. The Canadian wheelmen were there from Montreal as well. It was at the Rocks at Newport, in Rhode Island. And this eventually became the American Automobile Association. It's an important photograph. It was done by Notman, who eventually had previously done the photography at the Centennial in 1876. So you might enjoy looking at like you'll see the uniforms that they had. And like this is likely one club. There's sort of fun to look at. This was Boston Bicycle Club. And this is a bicycle store in Boston called Stoddard and Lovering. In their advertising, they called themselves the largest bicycle store in the world. True or not, I can't tell you, but that's what their advertising says. And it's nice to see. So some little small points. None of the bikes have saddles. And they did that so that they could stack them closer to each other. And that these are English vehicles. So that's a tandem tricycle. And these are what they call safety bikes. This is about 1887. And it's also fun looking at and trying to pick up. These were races, advertising posters for races. And this gives you an indication of what a rider would have found. This is in New England, and that's the road. And it's really a nice image because it captures the dirt road and how he rode, and what the houses and the gas lighting were like at the time. So it's a nice social scene. And this is the Getty and Zambra, which were the photographers, were one of England's most prominent photographers, and they also sold equipment worldwide, camera equipment, and some cycling equipment as well. Very small amount, but some. And this is an unusual and important photograph. it shows how they started the race was with a rope. See the rope rather than painted or lime. And F.J. Osmond was probably and Charlie Wilson, they were the two of the most famous racers in that particular scene. And this was taken at the Crystal Palace in London. Note the formality of the riders, sorry, of the trainers. These would be the trainers. These are other people, but it was a very high-end sport. This is Elsa von Buman, who was a professional lady racer, and she actually could defeat many men who were racing against her. That particular bicycle is a Gormley and Jeffrey. It's got these rounded handlebars. This is from Chicago, about late 1880s, and there was a whole, not a huge amount, but there was a whole called group of women professional cyclists who were on tour and made a living as such. She married a Canadian guy by the name of Eck from Montreal. And this is George Hendy, who started the Indian Bicycle Company, and then became the Indian Motorcycle Company, and one of America's most famous brands. He was the amateur champion of the United States for a goodly number of years into the early 18 to mid 1880s, and very prominent, successful racer. In his particular case, his medals are still in a library in Springfield, Massachusetts. So this is Binghamton, New York. Which is quite close to Hammondsport. It's a nice, quite a few people in the train. This bicycle, or tricycle, sorry, is called a DOS, which is back to back. He'd be going forward. This guy had a bugle. Bugles were generally the item of choice in riding in clubs or riding on bicycles to give signals to oncoming people, or if you're in a club ride, to go faster, slower, etc. They use the bugle calls of the cavalry. So this is lever driven. It's got a lamp there. There's his bugle, and there's a nice picture. Leopold Pearson is his name. This person, Leopold Pearson. And this is in front of the White House. So a tricycle like this is called a sociable. And this is just a regular tricycle. This could have been a Starley or a Victor. The picture's about 1883, 84. And I don't think I think the barriers are a little bit higher now in front of the building than they were then. You could actually go right into the White House at that time. So quite interesting times. So this is a this is a this is a Rudge tandem. And these are hard-tired safeties. So what's happening is that there was a lot of use of bicycles, but they weren't comfortable on the hard roads. So these were before the pneumatic tire, and they called these hard-tired safeties. So this is a hard-tired tricycles. These are hard-tired safeties, and you can see the lamps. Mid to late 1880s, this image. This is dated 1878. This is actually the first bicycle that was called a safety bicycles. This was invented by a guy by the name of Harry Lawson, who sort of went down in shame, but he invented an awful lot. He was a brilliant promoter and developer. And this company, Singer, was a huge maker of bicycles at the time in England. So that's a very important photograph. Now, these are two photographs that I stitched together. They're called dicycles, D-I-C-Y-C-L-E, but they were referred to then and now properly as bicycles, because only two of the wheels were on the ground. These are propelling. They have bands, and they made them with chains, and they made them with different ways. That little thing, if the lady went backwards or the person went backwards, that backbone would stop the vehicle from her flipping over. And here's another, you'll see a bunch of bicycles now that are all just different and sort of mechanically very interesting. This was the most interesting time, in my opinion, from the beginning of the 1870s to the end of the 1880s, when all these developments came into the market to try and make the bicycle as we know it today, which eventually developed more or less by the mid 1890s. There was very little, there were individual developments, but this was the interesting historical bicycle time. So this is called a facile. Stay pumped, and the wheels, obviously the front wheel, not obviously, but front wheel revolved, and you started to get lower and lower because when they were on the high wheel bikes, if they hit a rock or an animal or a bump or something, and they went over the handlebars, it called it a header, but a lot of people died. So they were trying to develop the bicycle to get it smaller and smaller. This is what they call a kangaroo. And this guy's name it's identified on the back, Timberlake. It's the same as the Timberlake, the name of the singer in world America. It's actually a Canadian singer. So that's a kangaroo, and you see the chain drive there. I have one of these in my living room, and the last bicycle, I have another one of those in the living room. I wanted to show this. This is another kangaroo, but this is a lot of people collect tobaccana, and these were tobacco pots. And there's a cigar store Indian. And this particular picture, is from Syracuse, New York. And it's quite nice. It's got the two high wheel bikes, a lovely social scene. This is from Nanuet, New York. This is a full plate tintype, and it has another kangaroo, two high wheel bikes, and two bikes that they call stars. Stars were built in New Jersey, Smithville, New Jersey. But it's sort of nice to get these pictures where he's relaxing. He's got his legs up on the bike. Andre, if we get to about 15 minutes, let me know and I'll speed up.
Yeah, sure thing.
Thank you. This guy's going down the steps of the Capitol. And why this is important is because, again, this Star bicycle was being sold so that he didn't go over the handlebars, have a header, and potentially kill himself. I mean, these guys were going pretty fast, and they didn't have the kind of helmet and protective stuff that we have today. So that this is actually an iconic photograph. And this is another Star bicycle, different model, and the knees went up so you could get the wheel a little bit smaller, and the wheels went up under there, and it's all mechanical developments. And this is the Rover. This was the first, what they consider the first bicycle that was the normal pattern. I know that it's discussed, but once they got to this pattern, and then they got pneumatic tires, well, even with the hard tires, the whole industry exploded and became open for women to start riding these bicycles. Bicycles, period, not these bicycles. Bicycles. The development went from here and started an explosion. And this guy's name was H.S. Owen, and these, according to him, he invented these bikes, and these were the first ladies' bicycles, ladies' framed bicycles that he designed were the first ladies' bikes in the world. The English have a better story. A person by the name of Nick Clayton debunked that story, but in the United States, he did well with that pattern. And so here's hard safeties again. And this here is called an extraordinary. So a high wheel bike or a penny farthing, the other common name for them was ordinary. And this has got this cranking mechanism. And so that model was called an extraordinary. And this is one of my favorite photographs. Another extraordinary, but very, very, very rare model. And you probably saw, and go back, the size of that rear wheel in proportion of the body and the size of that. It's quite a bit smaller. What they did was they had developed an internal 2-speed gear with this. And here's what he says: I owe my success to the fact that all my life I have never used alcohol in any form. I've never touched tobacco. I go to bed at 10 o'clock every night and no monkey business. So here's another, this is the late 1880s. This is a monocycle, and the gentleman created this out of a hard-tired safety. And of course, that revolved around. Those images are really unusual to find. And so they started to make gears and different things, levers, etc. So this was called a Springfield Roadster. This had two cranks that went up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. And that's how they propelled themselves. With the up and down motion, there was no revolving. And here's a reverse penny farthing. And this was called an eagle. This William von Wagner was a professional racer, champion of Rhode Island, but he went on to become involved in the professional bicycle racing circuit. This photograph's 1889.
Around 50 minutes left, by the way, Lorne.
Okay, I'm gonna go a little bit faster. So this is called is there a red lines there? I don't know what it is, and I don't have time to fix it.
I see it. Yes, there are.
Yeah,
I have
somebody's
no
goofing.
idea what it is. It just came up. And
Yeah,
again,
somebody's
no
goofing,
idea.
somebody's goofing around on you, Lauren.
Okay, well, it doesn't matter. I have to keep going. So this is called a geared facile. You saw the facile earlier. This is a geared model. And this here is, again, hard-tired safeties, but this is at Niagara Falls. And there's 1, 2, 3. There's 4 of these tandem hard-tired safeties. And if you take a look at this guy's cap, he's probably from Montreal, because that was one of the clubs used snowshoe for their model. There was a meet of the League of American Wheelmen in Niagara Falls and Buffalo at the time, and I'm sure this is. So these are all sprung just like the mountain bikes of today. See springs there, sprung in the back there. So just these are called whippets, and this particular picture was taken on the Isle of Wight. And this here I just showed that people were riding. It was there was a mixture and hard-tired safety and then you're going to this is in Boston about 1889, 1890. And again, hard-tired safeties. Most of the high wheel bikes were gone by then. You've got one in this group. And then, this is a Duryea, which became a famous car. That maker, it had springs there, back brake there. And I have this one I selected to show that this tires started to get fatter, but this didn't have a valve, and it's impossible to tell where the valve would be if it was a pneumatic. So this I selected because it calls it with cushion tires. And that way you knew it was hard tire, but much fatter. They called them cushion tire. And collector's delight, the stuff that was being thrown out here is a guy's lifetime dream of getting that garbage in his collection today. These are called bantams. That's a bike shop in England, early 1890s. This is a ladies model. And this is the closest I got to duplicating the almost exact bicycle. So it has the wooden chain guard, the drop frame, mid 1890s. Beautiful. And this is in California. With the little carriage. This is Oakland, California. Start to see social scenes, but now all the tires are pneumatics. And it just, with the pneumatic tire, the drop frame and the more liberal clothing, it became a boon for ladies cycling. Here's a lady in bloomers. This is two photos stitched together. She's just showing in the clothes. And she was not a lady. This is one of America's greatest pieces of art. It's called American Gothic. It was a guy by the name of Wood. So this is my example of American Gothic, the guy, lady, same hair, house in the background. He's got a pitchfork, he's got a kid, but the balance with the two bikes and the two horses make it a very nice image. Again, just social history. People wonder about American Indians and Native American Indians. And that's a bear skin. And that's a trading post. This is a German photograph, but look how beautiful they were dressed. Mid to late 1890s. This lady's at the Boer War. That's Lord Kitchener. And she's got her little nursing stuff. That's a Scottish picture, late 1890s. An occupational with a guy with a transom. And I just wrote an article about this guy, and it's going to be published. I mean, this guy's really good to go. And some of you may have heard of Mile a Minute Murphy. Well, that's him there behind the train on Long Island, and he broke the mile a minute record, and that's a bike shop. Now this one's similar, but there's no chain here. So they had tried and they developed and they've brought back often chainless bicycles. They're called shaft drive. That's an example. And here's an example with a woman with a shaft drive bicycle. That's a stereoscopic. And those are the Viewmaster slides. These are the Viewmaster slides of years ago. This lady's a geologist, and just a very interesting story for me. I had wanted to buy the photo, but I refused to buy it because I knew it was faulted. And I thought it was the emulsion. And somebody from the Photographic Historical Society told me not to worry about it. It was the camera was placed on a ledge, and this was really a really important photograph. So I was fortunate to get it, but that's early early 1900, late 1890s. That's all. Those bikes are all attached together. This was a tin type that I reversed the image so you could read it, but it's actually a tin type with three Wolf American tandems. That's an English bike that's called an Eiffel Tower. And this is a rare bicycle, but set up with a baby seat. That's called a Dursley Pedersen. It's all just built like a bridge, all small tubing. They made men's and ladies models of those. About 1900, 1905, in that range. And they had the people going on the train tracks. There were no roads between towns out in the American West and other places, or the Canadian West, or just all kinds of places, because there was no need for towns. They were all built for farming communities, built off the railway. And this is how an awful lot of people traveled the rails. You see how the tire is on the rail there. It's kept firm and it's balanced there. And this was back and forth movement. And this just an American safety from the 1890s. And this is an example with some original colored printing of a photograph. And this also is a very lovely image. It's German, about 1920. It just got great composure, but the circus industry was, there was always bicycle acts with clowns and just acts themselves. This is just one example. And then you get into racing bicycles. And so the reason for this is he went around once with the bigger chain wheel, and the back wheel went faster and faster per single revolution. This photograph was taken Elkhart, Indiana. And this one, the Lautrec did a very famous poster, LeShane Simpson. This is a LeShane the Simpson chain. And this guy Miller, and he's on a Waltham Comet as the bicycle. But they're finding these photographs with these unusual components is a challenge. This here is A.V. Rowe, the aircraft person. I never got a Wright Brothers item. I have one Curtis item, thanks to Andre for helping me identify it. But this is A.V. Rowe, the Avro Aircraft Company. Quite an important person, bicycle racer. And here's America's most famous racer, a guy by the name of Albert Augustus Zimmerman. Zimmy was his name, and he was surely America's greatest racer of the era. That's Major Taylor, who's become a hero for a lot of colored people, Black people. And he won the world championship in Montreal in 1897. This photograph is from Montreal and is from 1897 when he won the race. Quite pensive. And that guy's name was Bertie Munger, and he was Major Taylor's friend and eventually became his business manager. It's an Imperial bicycle. And this is Stearns from Syracuse, New York. And these people were riding, and the bike, a single rider would be behind them. So this is used in pacing. John S. Johnson. So these guys would go faster. Johnson would be behind, and whoever could break the speed records. This is an example of the type of vehicle that they used until they got motorized. And that's the Orient 10, which was also built in, I think, Chicopee Falls, Massachusetts. That was 10 riders. It's also supposed to be used for racing. This is an Australian bike. Look at the complexity. And that's about 1907. Amazing how technical that was. And this one here, this guy's name's Frank Kramer. He became a senator and he was a world champion. But what I like about this, oh, sorry, excuse me. This is Frank Kramer, my mistake. But when I look at this, I can almost hear the crowd and the noise and the screaming and whatever, smell and sounds and stuff. This is at a 6-day bike race. And again, favorite photo, to each her own wheel. Here's grandma. She's not too really thrilled with her, looks like her granddaughter going out for a ride. And this is Lord Kitchener going to well, where C.A. Lawrence was. Sorry, I'm out on this one. And these are actual women suffragettes. This is a picture from the suffragette movement. And I actually looked for a photo for over 50 years of the suffragettes and just fortunately got this last year. But it's been a long, hard road to find it. And these people wore identification. That was their identification for the suffragette movement. This is Valdez, Alaska. And this is Camp Zachary Taylor. And this is where they were getting shots in the flu epidemic, where I think 20 million people died that year. And again, just a lovely contemporary photo. And Pafford, what's the name of that bicycle? Sorry, the aircraft.
It's either a Curtis Triad or a Curtis Model D flying boat, I believe. Also, you're getting low on time.
Okay, so this is about 1911. I'm almost finished. This is a nice restaurant image. And there's a couple of motorcycle pictures here. This one's Copeland Steam Star. This is about 1888. Important image. And this is has to be one of the first electric bicycles, mid 1890s, about 96. And this here lady, just cut me off anytime. Motoring school for women, new profession for the fair sex, to Miss Eileen Preston, an enthusiastic lady motorist residing in Kew, belongs to the credit of being the first and only woman who has ever opened a motoring school exclusively for women. Her school is near Olympia, and her pupils become chauffeur secretaries to professional men who dispense the mere man for the charms of women motor drivers. Miss Preston is a clever mechanician and knows all about internal mechanisms of her car. I only included this because it was just a magnet for me. So that's it. That's all I can help you with photos for today. And thank you for affording me the opportunity to have this platform.